Son of a... Hello, and thank you for watching Everyday Trey. I'm Trey, this guy behind the camera, and this is my problem today. P2A00 along with P2A03, Bank 2 Sensor 1, Bank 1 Sensor 1. So they're both on the Bank 1 or Sensor 1, sorry, which means upstream, which means the ones that are closer to the motor or the headers itself. So what I'm going to do is actually see, I think the number one thing to fix this is that there is a exhaust leak somewhere up under there, and I'm going to go up under there and see if my vehicle has some kind of an exhaust leak or a bolt that is loose, and see if I can fix this, or is it something that I'm going to have to replace parts on. So let's get in it. So while I'm looking at this problem from the scanner side of it, I always tend to go into pending and stored. And of course, this one is back as always. I already know it's the evap canister on the back of it, because I have the classic issue that I will end up fixing sooner or later. But regardless, this is pending, same code, P2A00, P2A00, and then P2A03. That's in pending, and we'll go up to stored, and it should be the only two that are stored are the actual P2A00 and P2A03. So let me go ahead and see if I can go back into live data. These cheap little scanners come in handy a lot, to say the least. There's not a lot that I can see from the motor being off looking at the O2 sensors themselves, but it might give me an insight. So I'm going to cycle through this and see complete data set, see if I can see something from this cheap scanner. Here we are, Bank 1 Sensor 1, 305 millivolts, I believe it is. With the motor off, if it's getting a reading somewhere around there, that's okay. It's just when you have the car started that you want that actually. Bank 1, okay, should be jumping around. It has a value of, it'll go down to, you know, almost all zeros, and it should jump up to, I think some O2 sensors go to 0.9, some O2 sensors go to 1.1 or 1.2, but as long as it keeps jumping back and forth, big jumps, because this is the one towards the header. So it's doing the first fuel metering, and then by the time it gets to this one, Bank 1 Sensor 2, this one's going to be a little bit smoother, and it should not fluctuate as much as sensor or Bank 1 Sensor 1, or any Sensor 1, it doesn't matter what bank. But the Sensor 2s are always to move slower and a little bit more refined. Generally, they're going to, you know, have the same range that the first one can roll through, but this one wants to, you know, stay, let's just say, around 0.4 to 0.6, you know, trying to keep it even, so then it's even more metered as it goes through the exhaust system, and it makes its the computer makes its fine adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and see if there is any loose bolts from the underside and go from there. Small note on the 350Z, and this is without looking this up or anything, I'm pretty darn sure, being an auto mechanic for 20 years. Anyway, Bank 1 is on the passenger side. An easy way to tell, which I'm not having the easiest time being able to tell on this motor, but in general, you know, this is the 350Z VQ rev up block. And what I was getting at is that how you can tell number one cylinder and bank one is because when you look at the front of this, don't mind the mess, the cylinders. Okay, this one is more forward than this one. Because this is more forward towards the front of it, then this would be number one. So looking at that the same way, the passenger side, so this would be passenger side definitely. So easy way to tell definitely is that this is bank one because of the fact that this cylinder placement, all of these cylinders, if you can see that on camera, are not even, like, what is it? This is right here, coming on over. It's like over here somewhere. Yeah, so this whole bank over here is definitely moved forward, and that's why this is bank one, which is again the O2 sensor in my on my vehicle. That bank one is actually over here, like I was trying to point to. This is bank one. This is the O2 sensor that is a little bit lower than the bank two, which is like 0.6 or something. This is like 0.3 or something like that. I'm gonna see if there's a leak over on this side first, and then I'm gonna go over to this side on the exhaust and see if there's any bolts that are leaking or loose or any kind of carbon blowout. Lord have mercy, it's tight in here. Oh, look at that, yeah. But you might be able to see in there if there's any kind of black blowout, like where the exhaust is going or something like that. That's a telltale sign that, obviously you have some kind of an exhaust leak. Still rocking the air filter. I'll be running that later today in the rain because I gotta go make a rain. I gotta go make a rain. I gotta go make a run, and during that time, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be raining down here. So let me get this car jacked up, and then we will try to see if there's any bolts that are loosed. And from there, go ahead and after we fix that issue, if that is an issue, okay. Then we're going to go ahead and clear the codes out and then go ahead and run the car, see if those codes come back. Something I like to do that is maybe overkill or not, but here in the South, you don't really have to worry about it, especially with metal kind of deteriorating and things like that and trying to find places to jack up the car. But if you have a jack, these will end up, kind of digging into the metal slowly, and if you're anywhere near salt, then it just gets softer and softer, and yeah, so that's your investment gone. But this, just a little piece of wood in between there, kind of softens it, so then it's less damage even from the underside. So yeah, do it, don't do it, it's one of those things. I've seen it happen for many years in cars that have come in and been jacked up on the pinch welds, and the pinch welds are all crushed in, and they don't know how to jack it up. And it's like there's a lot of places up under the car to jack it up. Not everywhere, but there's frame, there's pinch weld, which I personally stay off of the pinch weld. There we go. So the previous owner before me went ahead and used these jack. This is a jack point. And this is what happens, and this is even from a car who's stayed in Florida the whole time. And that's what I fight against, is because I don't like that whatsoever. It's just one of those things. So I go down and into it where the frame is further down in there. So that might be it right there. Let's see. Yep, that's it right there. Just center that, and there you go. Super easy. Don't mind the wood splitting. Nothing else is happening. Just crushing under the weight is a-okay. I still think it's safer than having it direct metal to metal. get this sky high. This is a custom exhaust that I did make and customize myself, because you will never find a 350Z with a resonator like that. That is stock. Don't mind the really boogerish welds. It works and it's all sealed. My welder is not the greatest, but regardless, back on the point here. This is the bottom of the front of the Y pipe, and this would be the gasket. So what I was looking for was some kind of black marking along the edge to indicate that there's a good sized leak, and there's a little bit right there, okay? Don't get me wrong, because on camera you can actually see that whole gap in there. And there's just a little bit of carbon there, so I'm going to end up tightening that up. I don't think I have high temp exhaust putty for it, but that's okay. These are the eBay specials for the test pipes. I love these, but the only thing, after there's two problems with these resonators versus spending way too much damn money in my eye for these resonators, and that is because, one, there was a crack that ended up happening right here. So, you know, I had to go back in there with my crappy welder, which does work, obviously, here, but I had to cover that up, and then I wanted to go around the whole thing so then I didn't have to worry about that happening again, and it hasn't happened. It's really solid. No further leaks or anything from here. This right here, looking pretty darn tight for the spacer on there. So you have your O2 sensor spacer, so then if you have test pipes, you have to get that little spacer. I forget exactly what they're called right now, as I'm laying up under 4,000 pounds or whatever. But these are a necessity or necessary if you get test pipes and you keep them on your vehicle, which, depending on what state you're in, blah 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 blah. Anyway, then I moved up to this one to see if I could see the same thing on this one, and this one looks even more solid, like really good. But then I started coming up and looking at the O2 sensor. But Pepper, you can come in, Pepper. Okay, I'm filming. Can you keep it down? Thank you. So, as I was, Pepper, stop. I am recording right now. Lord have mercy. Anyway, you be good. So back to the video. As I was saying, I'm trying to show you this gap in here, and this gap, if you can see that, try to get it to focus. Yeah, that right there, that gap right there, I haven't touched it yet, but I'm getting a gap there. So I'm guessing that would be where my code set off. Now this is bank 1, or yeah, bank 1, sensor 1, because it's upstream. Upstream means right by the headers, who are connected to the headers that are connected to the motor. I'm looking way upside down now. But that right there, and then I'm headed over to this one, and guess what? This one's in the wide open a little bit better so you can see it. And look at that. Another gap. So when I'm talking O2 sensors, they come out with these wonderful tools, okay? O2 sensor tools. And in 20 years or more, anyway, with a lot of experience working on vehicles, I almost barely ever use this one. It just seems like it's quite just not necessary. There are a few applications where you do need this, don't get me wrong, okay? And everybody's car is different. This is for the 350Z, but this one is made of gold. Just in case you want to use a actual wrench and you have that wrench, it is a 22 millimeter, which you really can go ahead and use a wrench on that as long as you're around the right side of it. But this right here, this will be in my quick tools to tool bag to always have with me in case I have to do an O2 sensor and I don't have a 22mm wrench with me, because this one I use almost all the time. The other one, not so much, but that's okay. So if you can see the difference, that right, are you gonna focus? There we go. That right there is a little bit tighter. It ended up being somewhere around a full turn loose, which if you look at O2 sensors brand new, there's maybe 3.5 turns all the way around. I'm not really exactly sure, but it definitely was loose, because a little gap, because they have a metal gasket that crushes in between there. The exhaust is extremely hot, so a regular gasket would just deteriorate way too quickly. So they put a metal one there that is a little bit harder to crush, but again, this is a not exactly one of the cheapest sensors for your car, so you may not want to exactly put gorilla strength behind it. If you can see, this one still has the gap on it. So that right there is I'm gonna say, without getting my ass up and actually being on the top side again or running the car, this is probably my issue. One thing to note: if you do your O2 sensors, unplug them. Reason being, I've seen people time and time again come in here and they will plug it in and then they will start to twist this on here. And even with it being 3, 4, 2, 5 revolutions, whatever it is, to get this on here, there's not a lot of threads that goes into the pipe here. This will end up twisting and get bound, and then the wires get pulled out of the weakest point. So don't do that. I already have that in mind when I already put these in a long time ago, so there's literally no yeah, I don't know if can you see that? Gee whiz. Okay, so anyway, there's like no binding on this wire whatsoever, so when I go ahead and tighten this up, which I'm going to show you, then it shouldn't be an issue whatsoever. I did go from the bottom side to do this. It is you can do it from the top side with a lot of extensions and a universal joint, but that's okay. What I like to do is put this in kind of like a neutral status, so then this just moves on its own, okay? So what I would do after trying to put that there is go ahead and, if I can start this like one-handed, alright, but go up the wire, because that little black sheathing right here is a little bit too thick. Go above that little, there's like a zip tie that they use, and it'll slide right on there. And the reason it's still a neutral is because you're just looking for more room to actually throw this thing. So because we're throwing it clockwise to get it tight, I'm going to bind that up as high as I can. And I already have some swing room down here with this, being down here, and between the header or the test pipe and the actual transmission here. And there's that clutch. Hey, how's that looking in there? Anyway, so I try to give myself enough swing room to where this is going to be, it's not just going to be one click and that's it. Like, I've been there, I've had tight areas where I've had to work like that, but yeah, this is going to be the same, about a full twist of some sort. So you can see that's moving. It's on the exhaust, so it's not exactly the smoothest or anything like that. I'm glad it didn't pop out all the way, that's for sure. So I'm hitting the actual flange, that piece of metal on the bolt that comes off. So what I can do is actually put that on like you're loosening it, put a little, and then pull it off slightly, go all the way back and rotate. Find the tooth to sit on there, and then flick it back to tighten. Get yourself a couple clicks and you're ready to go again. So as soon as this is in, that's what I keep doing until this is done with. it's got some tension on it, but you'll feel it tighten up even more like it's just doing right now. I'm gonna put a final tiny tightening on that. Again, watch the wiring behind it. If you can, unplug it, so then every time you twist this, whether you're taking it out or putting it on or adjusting it because it just loosened for some odd reason, just make sure you don't bind that wire behind it, because yeah. I've had some universal type of O2 sensors where you had to do the wiring yourself, and almost every time it never wants to work out because there's some resistance in one of the wires that really throws off the O2 sensor, making it, pointless to have because it doesn't, read right. And I've used professional connectors, I've used soldering, it still just leaves a really bad taste in my mouth as far as trying to go out and buy something for cheap and then hopefully it works, and it never did. But that's okay. You want to go tight, but you don't want to try and break things. Never try to break things, which, I mean, I guess that's more like from experience, I guess, how tight that is. So if you can't, feel the metal tightening and have a reference of when to stop, they do make torque specs for a reason. But due to experience and everything else, I've been around the block a couple times, so is what it is. That is now tight, which does not look nearly like it was before. Again, that P2A00, P2A03 is a exhaust leak, and even on this side, I mean, that's not all the way around the whole thing, don't get me wrong, but this exhaust gasket from header to test pipe, or catalytic converter, what it's supposed to be, is actually still good, but it was that right there. So before I leave up under here, this is the driver's side, bottom of the test pipe, which I have taken these test pipes off like 1,000 times, which I'm still going back in there another time. Anyway, this right here, if you can see that right there, that carbon difference, because you can see the whole ring around it is like a grayish color, like kind of, just brownish. Just looks like, another auto part, and then you have that black part right there that is gapped and looks darker. That would be a carbon hole, or where an exhaust leak would be occurring. So I would suggest putting a new gasket in there if you see something like that. It doesn't take long. Just take that bolt off. It's a double bolt flange, so only 2 bolts, and you can pretty much just pry that apart and get that out there and replace it. You should clean up both surfaces, don't get me wrong, but I've been there before where you don't necessarily have to either. So, or even just run a flat file in between so both surfaces get it at the same time. Giggity. Regardless, I'm gonna go ahead and get from up under this car. Let's give my wheel a little shake. Every time. So from here, what I'm going to do is go ahead and erase the codes. I know I have the 420 code for the evap canister, and I also have the 2 codes that were in there before, both on pending, only the 2 for the read. Yeah, haven't even started the car yet. One thing you can always do is go right back, because if there is a constant issue, you technically don't have to all the time restart the vehicle or run it, things like that. Sometimes it'll actually notice that problem without actually having to. Pretty sure that this issue is resolved. I'm going to go ahead and run the car down the street and see what happens. Um, just because a code says something about an O2 sensor doesn't mean that, you should actually just throw that part that it says on there. Like, go into that area and actually use your eyeballs, because OBD2 comes with thousands of codes, and yet just about all of them, almost a really large percentage of them, don't lead you directly to the problem. They're just telling you there's a problem in certain areas. So use your eyeballs, use your brain. You'll be able to figure this out. This isn't rocket scientist or anything, or rocket science, but it kind of is rocket science. And anyway, be confident in yourself. You can figure this out for sure. I do hope that this video was helpful of some sort. If it was, please like, subscribe. I'm going to be putting out some videos, so there will be, a lot of things to learn, and how to take care of your own vehicle, and figuring out issues with everything else. Thanks for watching.